It was a chaotic evening at the Kingswell Mansion, and three children were planning the greatest escape of their young lives. 7-year-old Annie sat cross-legged on her pink princess bed, her face twisted in the kind of serious concentration usually reserved for brain surgeons and people trying to parallel park. 5-year-old Jamal paced back and forth across the room like a tiny general plotting a military coup. And 3-year-old June was sitting in the corner, tears streaming down her chubby cheeks, hiccuping so hard you'd think her lungs were auditioning for a drama series. "Stop crying, June," Annie whispered urgently, glancing at the door as if Angela might burst through it at any moment with her long neck and even longer list of complaints. "We need to focus." "But I'm hungry," June wailed, her bottom lip trembling like a leaf in a thunderstorm. "My stomach is fighting me. It's saying, 'June, where is food? Why are you treating me like this?'" Jamal stopped pacing and turned to his baby sister with the kind of exasperation only a 5-year-old trying to be mature could muster. "Your stomach can wait. We have bigger problems, like how we're going to escape from this house without that evil woman catching us." "Don't call her a woman," Annie corrected, her nose wrinkling in disgust. "Women are nice. She's a long-neck evil giraffe." June's tears paused for a moment as she giggled. "Giraffe? A mean giraffe that eats children instead of leaves," June added, warming to the theme. "June, giraffes don't eat children," Jamal started. "Well, this one does," June shot back, her little face suddenly fierce. "She tried to eat us with her words, her mean, terrible, horrible, evil words that tasted like poison." "Guys," Annie tried to get them back on track, "can we please focus? We need a plan." "What plan?" Jamal threw his hands up dramatically. "Your plan is just, let's run away to Grandma's house. That's not a plan, Annie. That's a dream, a hope, a prayer to the ancestors." "Well, do you have a better plan?" Annie challenged, putting her hands on her hips. "Yes, we wait for Daddy to come back and we tell him everything. And starve for a whole week while we wait? Jamal, use your brain, the one that's supposedly so big." "My brain is big. It's bigger than yours." "Then why can't it come up with a better plan?" "Because my brain is too busy keeping us alive while you make terrible decisions." "I don't make terrible decisions. You wore your school uniform to church last month. That was one time and I was confused." June, who had been watching them argue like a tennis match, suddenly stood up with all the authority a 3-year-old could muster. "Stop it. Both of you are giving me a headache. My head is sending me messages and it's saying, 'June, your siblings are too loud. Tell them to shut up or I'll explode.'" Both Annie and Jamal stopped and stared at their baby sister. "Did she just tell us to shut up?" Jamal whispered. "I think she did," Annie whispered back. "I like this new June," Jamal said, impressed. The Kingswell Mansion was the kind of house that made people stop their cars and stare with their mouths hanging open like they'd seen a flying elephant. It sat in the heart of Lecky Phase 1, with gates so tall they probably needed their own ZIP code, flowers that looked like they'd been personally arranged by angels, and a driveway so long you could train for a marathon on it. Everything about the mansion screamed money. From the marble floors so shiny you could see your reflection having a conversation with itself, to the chandelier in the living room that sparkled like someone had captured all the stars in the sky and hung them from the ceiling. But right now, to Annie, Jamal, and June, the Kingswell Mansion felt less like a palace and more like a prison run by an evil warden with a neck like a ladder. Let's rewind a bit to understand how 3 privileged children who had everything, toys that cost more than some people's yearly salary, a chef who could make food that would make Gordon Ramsay weep with joy, and bedrooms bigger than most people's entire houses, ended up plotting an escape like they were in a Prison Break movie. It had started that afternoon. Well, technically it had started 3 days ago when their father left. Their father, Mr. Brian Kingswell, billionaire businessman, owner of half of Lagos, or so it seemed, in general important person, had gathered his three children in the living room before his trip to South Africa. He'd hugged them so tight June's cheeks had turned the color of ripe tomatoes. He'd kissed Annie's forehead about 17 times. He'd ruffled Jamal's hair until it stood up like he'd been electrocuted. "Be good for Miss Angela, okay?" he'd said, his voice full of that parent confidence that everything would be fine. "But Daddy, we don't like her," Annie had complained, crossing her arms in that universal child gesture of protest. "She's always shouting at us. Her voice is so loud, I think the neighbors 3 streets away can hear her." "Annie, that's not nice," Brian had said, though his voice lacked conviction. Truth was, even he had noticed that Angela had a temper that could make Mount Vesuvius look calm and reasonable. But he'd told himself she just needed time to warm up to the kids. After all, they could be a handful. 3 children under the age of 8. That was enough to make anyone a little irritable. Right? Wrong. What Brian didn't know, what he couldn't have known because he'd been too busy being a billionaire and making money moves, was that the moment his private jet took off, Angela transformed. She went from slightly annoying girlfriend who fake smiled at the children to full-blown villain in a Nollywood movie so fast you'd think she'd been waiting for this moment her entire life. That Tuesday afternoon, June had been playing in the living room. She'd been minding her own business, making her dolls have a tea party. Lady Fluffington was having a disagreement with Princess Sparkles about who got the last imaginary cookie, when she accidentally knocked over a glass of water. The glass didn't even break. It just tipped over. The water spilled on the marble floor, the same marble floor that got mopped approximately 20 times a day by an army of housekeepers who probably knew that floor better than they knew their own children. It was nothing, a minor spill, the kind of thing that happens when you let a 3-year-old near liquids. But Angela acted like June had just burned down the mansion, invited armed robbers to come steal everything, and then posted about it on Instagram with the hashtag #sorry not sorry. "June!" she screamed, storming into the living room with her high heels clicking against the floor like gunshots at a firing range. "What is wrong with you? Are you stupid or just pretending to be stupid?" June froze, her little hands still clutching Lady Fluffington. Her eyes went wide. Her bottom lip started trembling. I'm sorry, Miss Angela. It was an accident." "An accident?" Angela's voice rose to a pitch that could probably shatter windows in the next state. "You people in this house are so careless, so spoiled. You don't know the value of anything. Do you know how much this marble costs? Do you? Of course you don't. You probably think floors just appear out of thin air. You probably think water cleans itself and mops itself and—" "Miss Angela, please." 7-year-old Annie had come running from the dining room where she had been doing her homework. She rushed in, pencil still in her hand, just in time to see Angela towering over June like a skyscraper over an ant. "It was just water. The maids will clean it. It's not a big deal." "Not a big deal?" Angela whirled around so fast her neck made a sound. "Oh, so now you're talking back to me? You children are so rude, so disrespectful. Your father spoils you rotten. You need discipline, real discipline, not this soft, gentle, oh, let's talk about our feelings nonsense. You need someone to teach you respect." "We do have respect," Annie said, her voice shaking but brave. "We're just not scared of you." Angela's eyes flashed with something dangerous. "Well, maybe you should be scared of me." That's when Jamal appeared in the doorway, his toy car still in his hand. He was only 5, but he had the protective instincts of a tiny warrior. He took one look at June's tear-streaked face, at Annie's defensive posture, and planted himself between his sisters and Angela like a miniature bodyguard. "Don't shout at my sisters," he said, his voice small but fierce. "You're not even our mom. Our mom would never shout at us like this. Our mom was nice. Our mom had a heart. The mention of their late mother, the woman who had died when June was just a baby, made Angela's face twist into something ugly, something mean, something that made all three children take a step back. Your mother? Angela laughed, and it was the coldest sound the children had ever heard. It was the kind of laugh that could freeze water. Your mother is dead and gone. She's been dead for years. And until your father marries me, which he will, I'm the closest thing you have to a mother, so you better start showing me some respect. Or better yet, maybe you should join your mother 6 feet underground and see how you like that. The room went so silent you could hear a pin drop 3 houses away. Annie gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. You can't say that. That's evil. Evil? Angela stepped closer, her eyes glittering with something that looked like satisfaction. You want to see evil? I'll show you evil. You want to be disrespectful? Fine. You can all go to your rooms right now. No dinner, no TV, no tablets, no phones, nothing. Let's see how long you last without your precious devices and your fancy food and your soft beds. But we haven't eaten since lunch, Jamal protested, his voice rising with panic. And it's already evening. I can do whatever I want. Angela's voice hit a volume that probably registered on earthquake monitors. I'm in charge now. Your father left me in charge, and what I say goes. Now get to your rooms before I really lose my temper. We're hungry. June started crying harder, her little face turning red. My stomach hurts. It's saying mean things to me. It's saying, I don't care if you starve, Angela screamed, and the venom in her voice made even Annie, brave, bold Annie, take a step back. Maybe hunger will teach you some manners, you spoiled, ungrateful, horrible little brats. You should be grateful I even talked to you. Do you know how many children would kill to live in a house like this, to have the things you have, and you can't even show me basic respect? We don't want to respect you, Annie shouted, tears streaming down her face now. Her voice cracked with emotion. You're mean. You're cruel, you're evil, and you don't even love us. You just love Daddy's money. That's all you care about, his money and his cars and his house. You don't care about us. Angela's face went so red it looked like her head might actually explode and spray paint the walls crimson. You know what? She said, her voice dropping to something cold and deadly. You're right, I don't love you. I can barely stand you. You're annoying, you're loud, you're always in the way. The only reason I put up with you is because of your father, but guess what? He's not here now, is he? He's in South Africa, probably having the time of his life without you whiny little brats, and he won't be back for a whole week. She smiled then. It was the kind of smile that belonged in horror movies. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to march yourselves upstairs to your rooms. You're going to stay there, and I don't care if you starve. In fact, I hope you do. Maybe then you'll learn some gratitude. You can't do this, Annie cried, her voice breaking. When Daddy comes back. Your daddy isn't coming back until next week. Angela grabbed Annie's phone from the table where she'd left it. Then she grabbed Jamal's tablet from the couch. And by the time he does, you'll have learned your lesson. Now give me your devices, all of them. You're not calling anyone, not your father, not your grandmother, nobody. The children had no choice. With shaking hands, they handed over their tablets, their phones, their Nintendo Switches, everything that could have connected them to the outside world, to help, to safety. Angela collected them all with a triumphant smile. Now get out of my sight before I do something I might regret, or actually something you'll regret. I'll be just fine. The children ran. They thundered up the stairs like their lives depended on it, which honestly, it felt like they did. Their feet pounded against the marble like drums of war. They ran like they were being chased by a monster, because they were. They locked themselves in Annie's room, and that's where they'd stayed for the past 3 hours. 3 hours of empty stomachs, 3 hours of fear, 3 hours of whispered plans and tears and anger. And that's how we got here. She said she doesn't care if we starve, June whimpered, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks like tiny rivers. She said she hopes we starve. She wants us to die, Annie. She's a murderer waiting to happen. Annie's jaw tightened with determination. She looked like a tiny general about to lead her troops into battle. Then we can't stay here. We have to leave. We have to go to Grandma's house. Jamal stopped pacing and looked at his older sister. But Daddy said Grandma lives in Ikoyi. That's far. That's like 1,000,000 miles away. It's not 1,000,000 miles, Annie said, rolling her eyes. Don't be dramatic. I'm not being dramatic. I'm being realistic. Ikoyi is far. I know where Grandma lives, Annie insisted, her chin jutting out stubbornly. Remember, we went there for Christmas last year. Big house, blue gate, lots of flowers, like a jungle of flowers. I remember it. Do you remember how to get there? Jamal asked, raising one eyebrow like a tiny lawyer about to destroy a witness on the stand. Annie hesitated, just for a second, but it was enough for Jamal to pounce. Aha! You don't know. You don't know how to get there. I didn't say that. You hesitated. Hesitation means lying. It does not. It does. I saw it in a movie. You're 5. You shouldn't be watching movies about lying. Well, I did, and you hesitated. Okay, fine. Annie threw her hands up. I don't know the exact way, but I know it's in Ikoyi, and Ikoyi isn't that big. We can find it. Jamal stared at her like she'd just said the earth was flat and made of cheese. Annie, Ikoyi is huge. It's massive. It's gigantic. There are probably like 1,000 houses there, maybe 1,000,000 houses. And they probably all have blue gates because rich people love blue gates. It's like their favorite things. Rich people see blue gates and they're like, yes, that's the one. That's the gate that will show everyone I have money. How do you know what rich people love? Annie challenged. You're 5 years old. You still think the tooth fairy is real. The tooth fairy is real. Daddy said so. Daddy was lying to protect your feelings, Jamal gasped like Annie had just revealed a government secret. You take that back. No, take it back. The tooth fairy is not real, Jamal. It's just Daddy putting money under your pillow. Lies, slander, betrayal. Oh my God. Both of you need to stop, June suddenly shouted at the top of her tiny lungs, making both her older siblings jump. You're being so loud. Miss Evil Giraffe Woman is going to hear us, and then she'll come up here and probably lock us in a dungeon or something. Is that what you want? A dungeon? This house doesn't have a dungeon, Jamal said. How do you know? Have you checked? Maybe there's a secret dungeon behind the bookshelf. Rich people love secret dungeons. That's not, you know what? Never mind. Annie took a deep breath, clearly trying to channel some adult energy. Okay, here's the plan. We wait until Angela is busy watching her show. You know how she gets with those telenovelas. She could watch a meteor heading straight for the house, and she'd just move her chair to get a better view. That's true, Jamal admitted, his anger fading. Last week, the smoke alarm went off because the chef burned something, and she just waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. Didn't even look away from the TV. Exactly. So we wait until she's completely absorbed. Miguel and Maria or whoever are having their daily dramatic breakdown. That's when we move. What about Uncle Joseph? Jamal asked. The gateman? Annie actually laughed. Uncle Joseph? That man is always sleeping. I think sleeping is his real job and being a gateman is just his side hustle. I've never seen him awake for more than 5 minutes. Last week I saw a bird building a nest in his hair, and he didn't even notice. That bird probably has eggs by now, Jamal said. Probably has baby birds, Annie agreed. A whole bird family, Julian added, living rent-free in his hair. Despite their fear, all 3 children giggled. Okay, Annie said, getting serious again. We need to pack. Fast. They sprang into action like tiny special forces operatives. Annie pulled out her pink Chanel backpack, a gift from her father that probably cost more than a car, and started stuffing it with clothes. 2 dresses, a pair of jeans, her favorite pajamas with the stars, her toothbrush, because Grandma always said, if you don't brush your teeth, they'll fall out and you'll look like a Halloween pumpkin. Jamal grabbed his blue Gucci backpack and packed his clothes too. He also snuck in his favorite toy car, the red Ferrari one that actually worked, because you never know when you might need a good toy car. Maybe Grandma had a racetrack. You had to be prepared. June, being 3 years old and having the attention span of a goldfish on vacation, didn't really understand the concept of packing for a journey. She just grabbed her teddy bear, Mr. Snuggles, her blanket, the pink one with the unicorn, and her plastic tiara from that birthday party 6 months ago. June, you need actual clothes, Annie said, trying to be patient while simultaneously wanting to scream. I'm wearing clothes. June looked down at herself, confused. You need clothes for tomorrow and the day after. You can't wear the same dress for 3 days. Why not? It's a good dress. It has pockets. June, look. June stuck her hands in her pockets and pulled out a piece of candy wrapper, a rock, and something that might have once been a cookie. See? Pockets. Annie closed her eyes and counted to 5, then to 10, then to 15. You know what? Never mind. I'll pack for you. Thank you. You're the best sister ever. When I grow up, I want to be exactly like you, except taller and with better hair. There's nothing wrong with my hair. It's fine, June said diplomatically, in that way 3-year-olds have of being accidentally savage. But mine is better. Mine is shinier. It's like silk, like expensive silk. Like silk that costs $1,000. June. Okay, packing now. 5 minutes later, all 3 children were ready, backpacks on, shoes tied, looking at each other with a mixture of excitement and pure terror. This was it. They were really doing this. Everyone ready? Annie whispered, her hand on the doorknob. Ready? Jamal whispered back, though his voice shook a little. Ready, June whispered, bouncing on her toes. Adventure time! This is not an adventure, June. This is an escape. Same thing. It's really not. You know what? Never mind. Let's just go. Annie cracked open the door and peeked into the hallway. Empty. Silent. She could hear the faint sound of Angela's telenovela playing downstairs. Someone was crying dramatically. Someone else was shouting about betrayal. Normal telenovela stuff. Perfect. Now, Annie mouthed. They crept out of the room like tiny ninjas, like spies in a movie, like mice trying not to wake a sleeping cat. Every step felt dangerous. Every creak of the floorboards made them freeze like statues. June was holding her breath so hard her face was turning purple. Breathe, Annie whispered. You're going to pass out. June gasped and took a huge breath. When they reached the top of the stairs, Annie held up her hand in a stop gesture she'd seen in approximately 47 action movies. They all paused, listening. From the living room, Angela's voice drifted up. No, Miguel, don't believe her. She's been lying to you this whole time. That baby is not yours. Wake up. The children looked at each other. Angela was fully absorbed in her show. She probably wouldn't notice if an elephant walked through the living room wearing a tutu. Now, Annie mouthed again. They started down the stairs, one step at a time, testing each step before putting full weight on it, moving slower than a snail with a fear of heights. Annie went first, then Jamal, then June bringing up the rear. They were halfway down when disaster struck. June's teddy bear, Mr. Snuggles, the beloved companion, slipped from her hands. It tumbled down the remaining steps in what felt like slow motion. Thud, 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 thud. It landed at the bottom with a soft but definitely audible sound. All three children froze, not breathing, not moving, not even blinking. From the living room, "Maria, you fool, you absolute fool. How could you trust him?" Angela sighed loudly. "These people and their drama, I swear to God. Just communicate. It's not that hard. Just use your words." 5 seconds passed. 10 seconds. 15. No footsteps. No angry voice demanding to know what they were doing. Annie let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. She hurried down the rest of the stairs, grabbed Mr. Snuggles, and handed him back to June. "Hold him tight," she whispered with enough intensity to make June's eyes go wide. June nodded seriously and gripped Mr. Snuggles like her life depended on it, like he was made of gold and diamonds and million-naira bills. They made it to the front door. Annie's hand closed around the doorknob, one of those fancy gold ones that probably cost more than most people's monthly salaries and had probably been imported from some country where doorknobs were considered art. She turned it slowly, so slowly, praying it wouldn't squeak. It didn't squeak. The door swung open with a quiet whisper, and the evening air rushed in to greet them. It was around 6 p.m. and the sky was painted in shades of orange and pink. In any other situation, it would have been beautiful, Instagram-worthy even. But right now, the children weren't thinking about beauty or Instagram. They were thinking about freedom and jollof rice, but mostly freedom. "Come on," Annie whispered. They slipped through the door like ghosts, like shadows, like three small children who were absolutely terrified, but also absolutely determined. Then they closed the door quietly behind them and ran. Their little legs pumped as fast as they could go. They ran across the massive compound like their lives depended on it, past the fountain that had koi fish living in it. Those fish had a better life than most humans. Past the rose garden that the gardener spent 4 hours a day maintaining. And that man loved those roses more than he loved his own children. Past the swimming pool that sparkled like a giant blue gem under the evening sun. When they reached the gate, they found exactly what they had expected. Uncle Joseph, the gateman, fast asleep in his little security post. The man was sprawled in his chair like he'd been hit with a tranquilizer dart. His head was thrown back. His mouth was wide open. A line of drool ran down his chin. He was snoring so loudly it sounded like a broken motorcycle engine trying to start up while simultaneously dying. It was honestly impressive. "I told you," Annie whispered triumphantly. "He sleeps like someone who's been in a coma for 3 years," Jamal observed. "He sleeps like someone who gave up on consciousness," June added. They squeezed past the gate. There was just enough space between the gate and the fence for 3 small children to slip through if they sucked in their stomachs and moved sideways. And suddenly, they were outside the Kingswell mansion, outside the only home they'd ever known, outside in the big, slightly terrifying world. For a moment, they just stood there on the street, staring at each other with eyes as wide as dinner plates. "We did it," Jamal breathed, his voice full of wonder and terror. "We actually did it," Annie agreed, her heart pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. June looked up at her siblings, her little face serious. "Now what?" Annie squared her shoulders, trying to look more confident than she felt. "Now we find Grandma's house and eat her jollof rice," June added hopefully. "Yes, and eat her jollof rice. With chicken? With so much chicken. And plantain? The sweetest plantain you have ever eaten." June's face lit up like Christmas morning. "Okay, let's go." And with that, with no real plan, no money, no phones, and nothing but hope and hunger, 3 children set off into the Lagos evening. Their adventure was just beginning. and they had no idea just how wild it was about to get. If you've ever seen three children dressed in designer clothes walking down a street in Lekki at 6 p.m. with backpacks on their backs and confused looks on their faces, you'd probably think those are rich kids whose driver abandoned them. And you'd be half right. Annie led the way because she was the oldest and therefore, in her 7-year-old mind, the most qualified to be in charge. Never mind that she had no idea where they were going. Leadership wasn't about knowing things. Leadership was about looking confident while having no clue what you're doing. Jamal walked beside her, his eyes darting around nervously like a rabbit who just heard a wolf sneeze. June skipped behind them, humming a song about the wheels on the bus, completely oblivious to the fact that they were three lost children in the middle of Lagos, with no plan and no adult supervision. "So," Jamal said after they had been walking for about 5 minutes, "which way to Ikoyi?" Annie pointed straight ahead with the confidence of someone who had absolutely no idea where they were going but refused to admit it. "That way." "Are you sure?" "Very sure." "You don't sound sure." Your voice went up at the end, like a question. "I'm sure." "Okay, but if we get lost?" "We won't get lost." "But if we do..." "Jamal, do you want to lead? Because if you want to lead, then lead. Otherwise, stop questioning every single thing I do." "I'm just saying, maybe we should think about this." "We've been thinking for 3 hours, and you know what all that thinking got us? Hungry. So now we're doing." "Doing what exactly? Walking in a random direction and hoping we magically end up at Grandma's house?" "It's not random, it's intuition." "Intuition?" Jamal's voice went up several octaves. "Annie, your intuition told you to wear your school uniform to church last month. That was one time, and the uniforms looked similar. One was blue and one was green. They're both clothes. I was tired." June, who had been listening to this argument while humming her bus song, suddenly stopped skipping. "Can you two please stop fighting? You're scaring my stomach. My stomach is already scared because it's empty. If you keep fighting, it might just give up and leave my body." Both Annie and Jamal stopped arguing and looked at their baby sister. "Your stomach can't leave your body," Jamal said. "How do you know? Are you a doctor? Did you go to stomach school?" "There's no such thing as stomach school." "Well, maybe there should be. Then people would know more about stomachs and their feelings." They kept walking, passing house after house. Big houses, expensive houses, houses so fancy they probably had their own names and social security numbers. Everything in this neighborhood screamed money. The cars in the driveways probably cost more than houses in other parts of Lagos. The gates were all tall and imposing. The security guards eyed the three children suspiciously as they passed, probably wondering why three small children were walking around unsupervised. But no one stopped them, because this was Lagos. And in Lagos, if something seemed weird, you just minded your business and kept it moving. "Do you think Miss Angela has noticed we're gone?" Jamal asked after another 10 minutes of walking. "Probably not," Annie said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. "She's probably still crying about Miguel and his relationship drama. That woman cares more about TV people than real people. What if Daddy calls?" "He won't. He's probably in meetings, and even if he calls, Angela won't tell him we're gone." "Why not?" "Because then she'd have to admit she was watching TV while we escaped, and she'd have to explain why we ran away. And then Daddy would find out that she's evil and he'd break up with her." Jamal thought about this. "That's actually pretty smart thinking." "I know, I'm occasionally brilliant." "Only occasionally? Don't push it." They turned a corner and found themselves on a main road. Cars zoomed past them, Danfos packed with people, Okadas weaving dangerously through traffic, fancy SUVs with tinted windows, tankers that looked like they might tip over any second. The noise was overwhelming. Car horns honking, engines revving, someone's car radio blasting music so loud the ancestors probably unheard it. A hawker shouting, "Cold water, pure water, drink for your body." The children instinctively moved closer to the edge of the sidewalk, away from the chaos. I'm tired, June announced suddenly, stopping in her tracks. My legs are tired. They're sending me messages. What are your legs saying now? Jamal asked with a sigh. They're saying, June, this is abuse, this is labor. We didn't sign up for this. We're luxury legs, not marathon legs. We were made for playing and dancing, not trekking to another state. Annie stopped and turned to face her baby sister. June, we haven't even left our area yet. We're barely 20 minutes away from home. 20 minutes? June's eyes went wide with horror. Your legs are not going to fall off. How do you know? Are you a leg doctor? Did you go to leg school? There's still no such thing as those schools. Then how do you know about legs? June, do you want Grandma's jollof rice or not? Annie asked, playing her trump card. June's face immediately changed. The tiredness vanished. Her eyes lit up like someone had switched on a light bulb in her brain. Yes, with chicken. Then your legs need to keep working. Tell them the jollof rice is waiting. June closed her eyes like she was having a serious internal conversation. Okay, legs, I talked to Annie. The jollof rice is waiting. The jollof rice with chicken and plantain, the sweet kind. So you need to keep working. I know you're tired, but think about the jollof rice. Think about how happy we'll be. Think about, June, you don't have to actually talk to your legs. I'm negotiating with them. This is serious business. They kept walking. The sun was setting now, painting the sky in deeper shades of orange and purple. The street lights started flickering on one by one, casting long shadows across the pavement. June moved closer to Annie, suddenly less confident. After another 15 minutes, Jamal spoke up again, his voice worried. Annie, I don't think we're going the right way. Why not? Because I don't recognize anything. When we went to Grandma's house at Christmas, we passed that big roundabout with the fountain, the one with the lion statue. It was a horse statue, Annie corrected. It was definitely a lion. Jamal, I'm older than you, and I say it was a horse. Being older doesn't make you right. It just makes you older. The point is, Annie said loudly, trying to get them back on track, we probably just took a different route. A different route, Jamal's voice cracked. Annie, there's only one route to Ikoyi from our house. It's not like there are 100 roads. There's the road. Well, maybe I'm taking a shortcut. You can't take a shortcut to a place you don't know how to get to. Says who? Says logic. Well, logic can mind his business. Annie, what? Annie spun around to face him and her face flushed. What do you want me to say, Jamal? That I don't know where we're going? That I might have made a mistake? That we're lost? Yes, that's exactly what I want you to say. Because we are lost. We're not lost. We're just temporarily, geographically confused. That's literally what lost means. June, I need to pee again, June announced, interrupting their argument. Both Annie and Jamal groaned. Again? I can't help it. I have a tiny bladder. It's not my fault I was born with small organs. June, we literally just walked past a bush 10 minutes ago, and you went then. That was 10 minutes ago. My bladder works fast. It's very efficient. It's like a professional pee maker. That's not, you know what? Fine. Fine. Annie looked around desperately. There. That bush. Go. What if there are snakes? There are no snakes. What if there are, though? What if there's a big snake just waiting for someone to pee so it can bite them? Why would a snake do that? I don't know. Maybe it's a mean snake. Maybe it has snake problems. June, there are no snakes with problems. Just go. June reluctantly went behind the bush. Annie and Jamal stood guard, both of them looking miserable. We're lost, aren't we? Jamal said quietly. Annie didn't answer for a moment, then in a small voice, maybe a little bit. A little bit? Okay, maybe more than a little bit. Annie, I know, okay, I know, but what else were we supposed to do? Stay there and starve? At least this way we're trying. We're trying to do what exactly? Wander around Lagos until we die of exhaustion? We're trying to find Grandma, and we will find her. We just need to what? I don't know. Ask someone. Ask someone what? Excuse me, do you know where our grandmother lives? We don't know her address or street name or house number, but she has a blue gate. Before Annie could respond, June emerged from the bush, looking relieved. Okay, I feel better now. My bladder is happy again. They started walking again, this time in silence. Both Annie and Jamal were too tired to argue. June was humming her bus song again, though quieter now, and that's when they noticed it. The neighborhood was changing, the houses were getting smaller, the gates less impressive. Some houses didn't even have gates, just simple fences made of zinc or wood. The cars parked outside were older, some missing parts. One car they passed didn't have any doors at all, just no doors, like doors were optional. The streets weren't clean anymore. There was trash, potholes in the road, the paint on the houses was peeling, and the people were different too. They weren't wearing designer clothes. They weren't walking with that I have kind of energy. They looked tired, worn down, like life was hard and they were just trying to survive it. Annie, Jamal said slowly, his voice shaking now. Where are we? Annie looked around, her own confidence finally crumbling like a sandcastle at high tide. I don't know. They'd somehow wandered from the pristine, perfect streets of Lekki, where even the dogs probably had trust funds, into somewhere completely different. The houses here were crowded together like they were fighting for space. Laundry hung from windows, clothes that had seen better days, better weeks, better years. Children ran around barefoot, chasing a deflated football that had given up on being round. Music blared from somewhere, one of those old boom boxes that looked like it had survived 3 wars and maybe a couple of apocalypses. This was not Lekki anymore. This was not Ikoyi. This was the slum, and 3 children in designer clothes. Annie in her pretty dress, Jamal in his crisp shirt, June in her fancy shoes, stood out like diamonds in a pile of rocks, like zebras at a lion convention, like 3 rich kids who had absolutely no business being there. I think, Annie said in a very small voice that was very unlike her usual confident tone, we might have taken a wrong turn. You think? Jamal's voice went up so high only dogs could probably hear it. Annie, this is not a wrong turn. This is a disaster. We need to go back. Now. I don't know how to go back. I don't know where we are. Then we're lost. We're lost in the slums. Do you know what happens to rich kids in the slums? What? I don't know, but it's probably not good. Guys, June's little voice cut through their panic. She was tugging on Annie's dress, her face scared. Those men are looking at us. Both Annie and Jamal turned to look where June was pointing with a trembling finger. 4 young men sitting on a low wall outside what looked like an abandoned building. They weren't old, maybe late teens, early 20s, but they had that look, that dangerous look, the look of people who had nothing to lose and were always looking for an opportunity. And right now they were looking at 3 rich children like they were walking ATM machines. One of them, tall, skinny, with a cigarette hanging from his lips, nudged his friend with his elbow. You see those children, he said, not even bothering to lower his voice. His friend followed his gaze. I see them. Those are not regular children. Look at their clothes. Look at their beds. Those ones are rich. Very rich. A third one joined the conversation. What are rich children doing here? At this time? Maybe they're lost, the tall one said, a smile spreading across his face. It was not a nice smile. It was the kind of smile that made your stomach drop and your survival instinct scream. Lost rich children. The fourth one stood up, stretching. You know what lost rich children mean? Money, they said in unison, their smiles growing wider. Annie, Jamal whispered, his voice shaking so hard the words could barely form. We need to go. Right now. I know, Annie whispered back, her own heart pounding so hard it hurt. Now, Annie. Annie grabbed both her siblings' hands and turned around, trying to walk casually in the opposite direction, trying to look like they knew where they were going, trying to look like they belonged there. But her heart was pounding so loudly she could hear it in her ears. It was beating out a rhythm. Danger, 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 danger. Run, run, run. Don't run, she told herself. If you run, they'll chase you. Predators chase running prey. We learned that in school. Or was it in a movie? Either way, just walk. Walk calmly. Walk like you're not terrified. Walk like, "Oi!" a voice called out behind them. "Small children, where are you going?" Annie's grip on her siblings' hands tightened. She walked faster. "We're talking to you." Another voice. Footsteps behind them now, getting closer. "They're following us," Jamal whispered, his voice cracking with fear. "I know," Annie whispered back. "What do we do?" "I don't know. You're supposed to know. You're the oldest." "Well, right now I don't know." "Annie, I'm scared," June whimpered. "I want to go home. I want Daddy. I want—" "Hey!" The voice was much closer now. So close Annie could smell cigarette smoke. "Stop right there." That's when Annie made a decision. Maybe it was the wrong decision. Maybe it was the right one, but it was a decision. "Run!" she screamed. They ran. 3 small children running through the slums, their backpacks bouncing against their backs, their expensive shoes slapping against the dirty ground. Behind them, the men laughed. "Run all you want," one of them shouted. "You can't get far." The children turned a corner, looking for somewhere to hide, somewhere safe, but they ended up in a dead end, an unfinished building, concrete walls, no way out. They were trapped. The 4 men caught up with them, breathing hard but smiling. They surrounded the children, blocking any escape route. "Where do you think you were running to?" the tall one asked, flicking his cigarette away. "There's nowhere to go." "Please," Annie said, her voice shaking but brave. She stood in front of her siblings like a tiny shield. "Please leave us alone. Our daddy is coming. He's very important. He has soldiers and police and lawyers." The men laughed. It was a cruel sound that made the children's blood run cold. "Soldiers," one of them repeated. "You hear that? Small girl, if your daddy has soldiers, where are they? Where are these police? They're coming. They're right behind us." "Really?" The tall one looked around dramatically. "I don't see anybody. Do you see anybody?" he asked his friends. "Nobody," they chorused, grinning. "So it's just you 3. 3 small, rich children." He crouched down to Annie's level, his eyes glittering with something that made Annie want to run and hide and never come out. "You know what we do with rich children who wander into our area?" Annie shook her head, tears starting to stream down her face. "We keep them," he said simply. "And we call their rich daddies, and we ask for money. Lots and lots of money." "You can't do that," Jamal shouted, his voice high with panic. "That's kidnapping. That's illegal." "Illegal?" Another man laughed. "Small boy, everything is illegal if you get caught. The trick is not getting caught." One of them reached for June, who was crying so hard she could barely breathe. "Let's start with the small one. She looks the youngest. Her daddy will probably pay the most for her." "No," Annie screamed. "Don't touch my sister. Don't touch her." That's when Jamal did something incredibly brave and incredibly stupid. He bit the man's hand. Hard. The man yelped and pulled back. "You little—" "Run!" Jamal shouted to his sisters. But there was nowhere to run. The men closed in from all sides. Annie screamed, Jamal screamed, June screamed so loud and so high-pitched it probably scared birds 3 streets away. The children grabbed each other, holding tight, screaming for help. "Help! Somebody help us! Please help! Help us! Help! Help! But they were in a dead end in the slums and no one was coming. No one was going to save them. Or so they thought. 2 streets away, Emily Badmus was having what she thought was a perfectly ordinary evening. Ordinary for Emily, anyway, which meant exhausting. She just finished her shift at the gym, 2 hours of teaching a class of middle-aged people who thought they were still in their 20s and whose bodies violently disagreed with that assessment. Mrs. Adetola had attempted a jumping jack, and Emily had genuinely thought she might have to call an ambulance. The woman had somehow managed to look like she was fighting an invisible opponent while also trying to fly. It had been both impressive and terrifying. Mr. Okonkwo had tried to lift weights that were clearly too heavy for him in an obvious attempt to impress the new receptionist, who was young enough to be his daughter and who was clearly not impressed. Emily had to physically stop him before he threw out his back and ended up in traction. And then there was Mr. Tunde, who spent the entire class arguing that back in my day, we didn't need gyms, we just carried water from the well and chopped firewood. Emily had wanted to point out that A, there were no wells or firewood in Lagos, and B, if carrying water was such good exercise, why was his stomach looking like he was pregnant with twins? But she'd held her tongue because she needed this job. It had been a long shift, a very long shift. Emily was 26 years old, stood at 5 feet 7 inches, and had muscles that could make grown men cry and possibly wet themselves. She had the kind of body that came from years of professional athletic training, lean, strong, powerful. The kind of body that said, I could absolutely throw you through a wall if I wanted to, but I'm choosing not to because I'm a civilized person. Her hair was pulled back in a tight ponytail that was barely holding on after 2 hours of demonstrating the exercises. Her gym bag was slung over her shoulder. She was wearing her usual outfit, black leggings that had seen better days, a tank top with a small hole in it. She really needed to buy new clothes, and sneakers that were one step away from falling apart completely. She was tired, bone tired, soul tired, the kind of tired where you're not sure if you're awake or dreaming or stuck in some weird in-between state. Her feet hurt like she'd walked across broken glass. Her back ached like she'd been carrying Mrs. Adetola around the gym, which she basically had been. Her shoulders were sore. Her neck was stiff. All she wanted was to go home to her tiny apartment, take a shower that lasted approximately 3 years, eat some leftover rice that was probably pushing the boundaries of food safety, and watch a Korean drama until she fell asleep with the remote control still in her hand. Simple, peaceful, uneventful. That's all she wanted. As she walked through the streets toward her apartment in the less fancy part of Lagos, the part where people actually had to work for a living instead of just existing off family money, Emily pulled out her phone and scrolled through her playlist. Maybe some music would help. Maybe some Afro beats would make the walk home less tedious. Maybe WizKid or Burna Boy could help her forget about Mr. Okonkwo's attempts to impress a woman who was clearly out of his league. She found a song she liked, put in her earphones, and was just about to press play when she heard it. Screaming, high-pitched, desperate, terrified children's voices. Emily stopped walking, pulled out one earphone, looked around trying to figure out where the sound was coming from. There it was again. Help! Somebody help us! Don't touch my sister! Help, please, help us! Emily's entire body went on autopilot. Years of training kicked in before her brain could even fully process what was happening. Muscle memory, instinct, the same reflexes that had made her a national champion, the same drive that had pushed her to win medals, the same fire that had always made her run toward danger instead of away from it. She dropped her gym bag on the ground like it had personally offended her and ran toward the screaming. Her feet pounded against the pavement. Her heart raced. Adrenaline flooded her system. She rounded a corner and the scene hit her like a punch to the gut. 4 men, 3 children. The men had surrounded the kids, backing them into a corner near an unfinished building. One of the men was reaching for the smallest child, a little girl who looked about 3 years old, crying so hard her whole body was shaking. A boy who couldn't have been more than 5 was trying to protect her, his little fists swinging at air, his punches landing nowhere because he was too small, too young, too helpless. And an older girl, maybe 7, was standing in front of her siblings like a tiny warrior, screaming at the men with a bravery that would have been admirable if it wasn't so heartbreaking. "I said, leave us alone," the girl screamed, her voice cracking with terror and rage. "Our daddy is going to arrest you. He's rich. He has soldiers. He has—" One of the men laughed, cutting her off. "Rich? Even better. We'll get plenty ransom for you." Emily saw red, not metaphorical red, actual red. Her vision literally tinged red with pure, undiluted fury. Now let's pause for a moment to understand something about Emily Badmus. Emily wasn't just some random gym instructor who'd watched a few Bruce Lee movies and thought she could fight. Emily was a former national champion in karate and taekwondo. She'd represented Nigeria in international competitions, fought opponents from countries she couldn't even pronounce, won medals, silver, gold, bronze, so many medals that her mother had run out of wall space and started keeping them in boxes. She'd been on her way to the Olympics, to glory, to representing her country on the world stage. And then she'd had an accident during a competition, a bad fall, a terrible landing. Her spine had fractured in 2 places. The doctors had told her she was lucky to be walking at all, that most people with her injury would spend the rest of their lives in a wheelchair, that she should be grateful she could move her legs. She'd spent months in physical therapy, months of pain, months of relearning how to move without agony shooting through her back, months of watching her dreams die. Her professional fighting career was over, done, finished. But just because she couldn't compete professionally anymore didn't mean she'd forgotten how to fight. Oh, she definitely remembered how to fight. And right now, she was about to remind these 4 idiots why you should never, ever mess with someone who used to beat people up for a living. Emily didn't announce herself, didn't shout stop, or leave them alone or any other dramatic movie line. She just moved, fast. She grabbed the nearest stick she could find, a solid piece of wood that looked like it had been part of some construction project before the workers had abandoned it, along with their work ethic and possibly their will to live. And then she swung it like she was trying to hit a home run. Crack! The stick connected with the back of one man's head with a sound that was honestly quite satisfying. The man went down like a sack of rice that had given up on life. He hit the ground with a thud that probably registered on earthquake monitors, clutching his skull and making sounds that suggested he was reconsidering all his life choices. The other 3 men whirled around, shocked expressions on their faces. For a moment, they just stared at Emily. This woman who'd appeared out of nowhere. This woman in gym clothes holding a stick. This woman who'd just knocked their friend unconscious with 1 hit. Then they looked at each other. And then, because men are often incredibly stupid, they started laughing. "You," one of them said, looking Emily up and down like she was a joke. "You want to fight us?" Emily tilted her head slightly, her expression completely calm, dangerously calm, the kind of calm that comes right before a storm, the kind of calm that should have sent every alarm bell in their heads ringing. "I don't want to fight you," she said, her voice level and cold, "but I will. And trust me when I say this, you really don't want that." The biggest one, a guy who looked like he'd been eating too much eBay and not doing enough exercise, whose stomach entered rooms 5 minutes before the rest of them did, cracked his knuckles like he was in an action movie. "This girl has mouth O," he said to his friends. "She thinks because she's holding stick, she's Jackie Chan. Come, let's show her we're not here to play." He lunged at Emily with all the grace of a hippo trying to do ballet. Big mistake. Huge mistake. Possibly the biggest mistake of his entire life. Emily sidestepped him so smoothly it looked like she'd teleported. One moment she was there, the next she was 3 feet to the left, and Mr. Big's stomach was stumbling forward, his arms grabbing at air, his face showing pure confusion about where his target had gone. And while he was still trying to figure out why physics had betrayed him, Emily brought the stick down on his knee. Crack, not a soft crack, not a gentle tap, a crack that sounded like someone had snapped a tree branch in half. The man howled, actually howled like a wounded animal, and his leg just gave up. It was like his knee had decided to retire early. He collapsed to the ground like a building with no foundation, clutching his knee and screaming, "Knee, oh God, my knee, she broke my knee. She actually broke my knee." "You're fine," Emily said calmly, though she'd definitely broken his knee, maybe in 2 places, possibly 3. "You're just being dramatic." The other 2 men looked at each other, suddenly looking a lot less confident. The laughter had died in their throats. Bro, one of them, a skinny guy who looked like he hadn't eaten a proper meal since 2015, whispered to his friend, "Maybe we should just leave." The third one, slightly taller and significantly more stupid, cut him off. "Are you crazy? She's just one woman. There are 2 of us. We can take her." "I really don't think we can." "Come on." And because stupid people often travel in pairs, they both rushed at Emily at the same time. This was their second biggest mistake of the evening. What happened next was honestly poetry in motion. Beautiful, violent poetry that would make Shakespeare weep. Emily dropped the stick, she didn't need it anymore, and met them head on with the kind of confidence that comes from years of professional training. She ducked under the first guy's punch so smoothly it looked choreographed. Then, while his fist was still swinging through empty air and his brain was trying to process why he'd missed, Emily drove her fist into his stomach with a force that probably rearranged his internal organs and sent them filing for relocation papers. The man doubled over, making a sound like "hoof," the kind of sound that meant all the air had left his body and wasn't coming back anytime soon. At the exact same moment, Emily spun around like a dancer, like a tornado, like someone who'd done this move 1,000 times and kicked the second guy in the chest with a roundhouse kick that would have made Chuck Norris proud. The man flew backward through the air in slow motion. Everything happens in slow motion when you're getting your ass kicked. He sailed through the air like he'd sprouted wings, and then he landed in a pile of trash bags that had seen better days. Crash! He lay there in the garbage, groaning, covered in things that smelled questionable and looked worse. The first guy was still bent over, still trying to remember how to breathe, when Emily grabbed his arm, twisted it behind his back with a move she'd perfected over years of training, and swept his legs out from under him with her foot. He hit the ground with a thud that probably woke up ancestors. The skinny guy who'd landed in the trash bags was trying to get up, garbage stuck to his clothes, banana peels in his hair, probably questioning every decision that had led him to this moment. He looked at Emily, really looked at her, and saw the expression on her face. It was the expression of someone who was just getting warmed up, someone who could do this all day, someone who was honestly enjoying this a little bit. His survival instincts, which had apparently been asleep until now, suddenly woke up and started screaming at him. "Run," they said. "Run like your life depends on it, because it does." He scrambled to his feet, garbage falling off him like he was a trash monster, and ran. He ran so fast you'd think he was competing in the Olympics. He ran so fast you'd think he was being chased by a lion. He ran so fast his shoes probably filed a complaint about workplace abuse. The fourth guy, the one Emily had hit with the stick first, had managed to get to his feet during all this chaos. He was still clutching his head, still seeing stars, still questioning his life choices. He looked at Emily, looked at his 3 friends on the ground groaning like they'd been hit by a bus, looked at the skinny guy running away like his pants were on fire, looked back at Emily, who was now looking at him with raised eyebrows like, "Well, you want some too?" He made the smart decision. He ran. He ran almost as fast as the skinny guy, which was impressive considering he probably had a concussion. Emily watched them both disappear around a corner, running like they were trying to escape the country. Then she let out a breath and turned her attention to the 3 children who were still huddled in the corner, staring at her with eyes so wide they looked like they might actually pop out of their heads and roll away. For a moment, nobody said anything. The only sounds were the groans of the two men still on the ground. Big stomach guy was still clutching his knee and crying, and punch guy was still trying to remember how to use his lungs. Then the oldest girl, Annie, spoke, her voice barely a whisper. Are you a superhero? Emily almost laughed. Almost. But she was too busy trying to catch her breath and making sure all the men were actually down. No, she said, walking over to the children and kneeling down so she wasn't towering over them like the men had been. Just a gym instructor with a black belt. And anger issues. Mostly the anger issues. The middle child, Jamal, was still staring at her like she'd just performed actual magic. You beat them. You beat all 4 of them. 3, Emily corrected. 2 of them ran away like the cowards they are. But yes, I beat 3 grown men. Though in my defense, they weren't very good at fighting, mostly just good at being stupid. The smallest one, June, despite still crying, despite the snot running down her face, despite her whole body shaking, looked at Emily with something close to worship. You beat them, she whispered, her voice full of awe. You beat them like a superhero, like Wonder Woman, like someone who's very angry at men who hurt children, Emily finished for her. Are you guys okay? Did they hurt you? All 3 children shook their heads, though they were still trembling. We're okay, Jamal said, though his voice was shaking so hard he could barely form words. They were trying to kidnap us. They said they wanted ransom. They said, I know what they said, Emily cut him off gently. She'd heard enough, but they're not going to bother you anymore. Well, these 2 aren't. She glanced at the 2 men still groaning on the ground. They'll be lucky if they can walk anymore. She stood up and looked around. They needed to leave, now, before the men recovered enough to try again. Or before they called their friends. Area boys always had friends. We need to get out of here, Emily said firmly. Can you walk? Yes, they said in unison, nodding like bobbleheads. Good, we're leaving. Now. Emily picked up her gym bag from where she dropped it. Thankfully, no one had stolen it while she was busy being a vigilante. Stay close to me. Don't let go of each other's hands. And if anyone tries to talk to us, you keep walking. Understand? Where are we going? June asked, her little voice trembling. Emily looked down at 3 terrified, traumatized children and felt her heart do something weird. Something soft. Something she didn't have time to examine right now. My place, she said. It's not far. You'll be safe there. Maybe I should take you to the police. They'd help you find your parents, Emily said. No, Jamal suddenly shouted, his voice rising with panic. No police. Please don't take us to the police. Please. Emily frowned, confused. Why not? The police can help you find your parents. We don't want the police, June joined in, her voice going high and scared. Please don't take us to the police. We're scared of them. Please, Annie begged, tears streaming down her face again. Please don't take us to police. We just want to find our grandma. Please, we'll be good. We promise. Just don't take us to the police. Emily stared at their faces, at their genuine terror, at the way they were all 3 looking at her like she held their fate in her hands. Something was very wrong here. Normal children didn't react like this to the mention of police. Normal children who'd just been almost kidnapped would want to go to the police. But these children looked more scared of the police than they'd been of the kidnappers. What the hell had happened to them? Okay, guys, Emily said softly, making a decision she'd probably regret later. Okay? No police for now, but you have to tell me everything. What happened, why you're here, everything. Deal? The children nodded so hard, their heads might fall off. Deal. Okay then. Emily adjusted her gym bag on her shoulder. Let's go. And stick close to me. The streets around here, they're not safe for children. As they started walking away from the scene, June reached up and slipped her small hand into Emily's. Emily looked down at the little girl in surprise. "Thank you," June whispered, looking up at Emily with eyes still full of tears. "Thank you for saving us. You're really strong. Like a superhero. Are you sure you're not a superhero?" Despite everything, despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system, despite the two men groaning behind them, despite the insanity of this entire situation, Emily felt herself smile. "I'm sure, sweetheart. Just a regular person who knows how to fight." "Can you teach me?" June asked seriously. "Can you teach me to be strong like you? So nobody can hurt me again?" Emily's throat tightened with emotion. "Maybe someday. Right now, let's just focus on getting you somewhere safe." As they walked through the darkening streets, none of them noticed the man with the injured knee pulling out his phone with shaking hands and making a call. "Boss," he said, his voice pained and bitter. "We had a situation. 3 rich kids, designer clothes, could be worth millions. But there's a problem. Some crazy woman came out of nowhere and, yeah, she beat us. All of us. I know how it sounds, boss, but I'm telling you, this woman was like a professional fighter or something. She broke my knee, boss. I think she actually broke my knee. Yes, boss, I'll send you their description. The woman and the kids? Yes, boss." But by the time he finished his call, Emily and the children were long gone, disappearing into the maze of streets that made up Lagos, heading towards safety, or at least heading toward Emily's tiny apartment, which was about to become the most unexpected safe house in Lagos history. Emily's apartment was in a part of Lagos that real estate agents would describe as, "At least we are not sleeping on the streets," and everyone else would describe as, "We're all just trying to survive here. Please don't ask questions." It was the kind of neighborhood where people knew their neighbor's business better than they knew their own, where children played football in the streets using empty water bottles as goalposts and chalk marks as boundaries, where the landlord only fixed things if you threatened to involve his mother, and even then he'd take his sweet time about it and act like you'd asked him to donate a kidney. Her apartment building was old, the kind of old where you wondered if it was being held together by hope, prayers, and maybe some duct tape. The paint was peeling off the walls like it had given up on life. The stairs creaked so loudly they basically announced your arrival to everyone in the building. The railing was broken in 3 places, held together by wire that looked like it might snap if you breathe on it too hard. But Emily loved it anyway, because it was hers. She'd paid every naira of the rent herself. No help from family, no handouts from anyone. Every naira earned through hard work and sore muscles and teaching middle-aged people that, "No, Mrs. Adatola, you cannot do a backflip. Please stop trying." The apartment itself was small, a 1-bedroom that could maybe fit 2 people if they breathed in and didn't mind being very friendly with each other. The kitchen was tiny, barely big enough for 2 people if they coordinated their movements like they were doing a dance. The bathroom had plumbing issues. That meant the toilet sometimes made sounds like it was possessed by an angry spirit. And the living room doubled as her workout space, which meant there was gym equipment competing with her secondhand furniture for space. But it was clean, it was safe, it was home. And right now it was about to become a shelter for 3 runaway rich kids. The children followed Emily up the narrow stairs, their eyes taking in everything like they'd landed on an alien planet. They'd probably never been in a place like this before, a place where the paint peeled, where the lights flickered, where you could hear your neighbors arguing through the walls. Annie kept glancing around like she expected something to jump out at them. Jamal was clutching his backpack so tightly his knuckles were white. June was still holding Emily's hand, like if she let go, she might disappear into thin air. "Home sweet home," Emily said, unlocking her door. She had 3 different locks because this neighborhood required 3 different locks if you wanted to keep your belongings actually belonging to you. She ushered them inside. "It's not much, but it's nice," Annie said quickly, her voice still shaky, but trying to be polite. Always the polite one, even after being almost kidnapped. Emily smiled despite herself. You don't have to lie to make me feel better. I know it's small. I know the ceiling has that weird stain that looks like a map of Africa. I know the floor tiles are cracked, but it's comfortable. And most importantly, it's safe. Nobody's going to hurt you here. She gestured to her small couch, a second-hand thing she'd bought from a neighbor who was moving out and needed to sell everything fast. It was brown, slightly lumpy, and one of the cushions had a mystery stain that Emily had tried to scrub out, but had eventually given up on and just thrown a blanket over. Sit, she said gently. You're safe now, I promise. The children sat down carefully, like they were afraid they might break it. Their backpacks were still on their backs, like they might need to run at any moment. You can take off your backpacks, Emily said, her voice soft. Really, you're safe here. I promise. Nobody's coming for you. Slowly, one by one, the children removed their backpacks and set them on the floor. But they still sat stiffly, their eyes darting around, their bodies tense like coiled springs. Okay, Emily said, pulling over her plastic coffee table and sitting on it so she was at eye level with them. Let's start from the beginning. What are your names? I'm Annie, the oldest girl said, her voice barely above a whisper. This is Jamal, and this is June. Annie, Jamal, and June, Emily repeated, committing the names to memory. Nice to meet you, I'm Emily. You can call me Miss Emily if you want to be formal, but just Emily is fine too. Miss Emily, all three children said at once, because apparently they had been raised with manners despite running away from home. Now, Emily said, her voice gentle but firm, I need you to tell me the truth, all of it. Why did you run away from home? Annie and Jamal exchanged glances, some kind of silent sibling communication that only siblings have. Our daddy is traveling, Annie started slowly, testing how much she should say. He went to South Africa for work. He's been gone for 3 days, and he left us with his girlfriend, Miss Angela. She said Miss Angela the way you might say root canal or tax audit. And Miss Angela is, Emily prompted. Evil, Jamal finished. She's pure evil, like the stepmothers in movies. But worse, much worse. Evil is a strong word, Emily said carefully, though she had a feeling she knew where this was going. She said we could starve, June burst out, her voice rising with emotion, her little face scrunching up. She said she doesn't care if we die. She called us spoiled brats. She said mean things about our mommy who's dead, and we can't even defend her because she's in heaven. Emily's expression hardened into something that could probably cut diamonds. She said that? She said she doesn't care if you starve? Yes, Annie nodded so vigorously her pigtails bounced. She locked us in our rooms. She took our phones and tablets so we couldn't call Daddy or Grandma or anyone who could help us. She wouldn't let us eat dinner. She said we could starve for all she cares. And when we tried to tell her she was being mean, she just got angrier. She screamed at us. She said horrible things about our mom. Our mom who's dead, she said. Annie's voice broke and she couldn't continue. She just started crying, big, heaving sobs that shook her whole little body. Jamal put his arm around her and he was crying too. June was already sobbing, her shoulders shaking like a leaf in a storm. Emily felt anger rising in her chest like lava in a volcano. The same anger she'd felt when she'd seen those men trying to hurt these children. The same fury she felt whenever she saw bullies picking on people weaker than them. What kind of person told children that they could starve? What kind of monster said horrible things about their dead mother? What kind of evil, heartless, cruel person did that to kids who'd already lost so much? She stood up and walked to her tiny kitchen, giving the children a moment to compose themselves while she tried to control her own rage. She gripped the edge of her counter and took deep breaths. 1, 2, 3. Don't get angry. They need you to be calm. Be calm. She opened her small fridge and pulled out what little she had. Some eggs, a little bit of bread, some milk. Not much, but enough. After a moment, she came back to the living room. So you decided to run away, Emily said, her voice carefully controlled. We wanted to go to our grandma's house, Jamal explained, wiping his eyes with his sleeve. Grandma is nice. Grandma never yells at us. She makes the best jollof rice in the whole entire world. And she would never let Miss Angela be mean to us. Never, ever. At the mention of jollof rice, June's crying slowed a little. Grandma's jollof is the best, with chicken and plantain, the really sweet kind. Where does your grandma live? Emily asked. Ikoyi, Annie said, sniffling. In a big house with a blue gate and lots of flowers. The most beautiful flowers you have ever seen, like a garden, like a princess garden. Emily raised an eyebrow. Do you know the address? The street name? The house number? Annie's face fell like someone had popped her balloon. No, but I know what it looks like. I saw it at Christmas. I remember the blue gate and the flowers and Annie, Emily said gently, not wanting to crush her hope but needing to be realistic. Ikoyi is huge. There are probably hundreds of houses with blue gates and flowers. Oh, Annie's voice was so small it almost broke Emily's heart. The children's faces fell so dramatically it would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. But, Emily said quickly, that's a problem for tomorrow. Right now, you guys look exhausted and hungry, and you've been through something really traumatic. When was the last time you ate? Lunch, June said miserably, her voice quivering. And it wasn't even good lunch. The chef made vegetables, so many vegetables. It was like a vegetable mountain on my plate. Emily couldn't help but smile despite everything. Vegetables are good for you, you know. That's what adults always say, Jamal muttered, crossing his arms with the indignation only a 5-year-old could muster. But adults also say, enjoy our childhood. How are we supposed to enjoy it if we have to eat vegetables? That's a contradiction. That's false advertising. You know what? Emily said, standing up. I have a feeling you guys aren't in the mood for vegetables raw now. How about hot chocolate? The transformation was immediate and almost magical. 3 faces lit up like Christmas trees, like New Year's fireworks, like someone had just told them they'd won a lifetime supply of candy. Hot chocolate? June breathed the words like Emily had just offered her the secrets of the universe. Real hot chocolate? Not the fake kind? The real kind with the chocolate and the chocolateness? With marshmallows? Annie asked hopefully, her tears momentarily forgotten. I don't have marshmallows, Emily admitted, feeling like she was letting them down. But I have sugar, lots and lots of sugar, and cocoa powder, and I can make it taste really good. We'll take it, all 3 children said in unison, their voices suddenly stronger, their tears suddenly less important in the face of hot chocolate. Emily laughed, actually laughed, for the first time that evening. Despite the chaos, despite the danger they'd just escaped, despite the insanity of having 3 strange children in her apartment, she laughed because these kids were still just kids, still got excited about hot chocolate, still could find joy in simple things despite everything they'd been through. She moved around her tiny kitchen, pulling out her small pot, the one with the dent in it from when she dropped it while half asleep, her cocoa powder, bought on sale 3 months ago, milk, thankfully still good, and sugar, lots of sugar because these kids needed something sweet after the day they'd had. The children watched her like she was performing magic, like she was a wizard creating a potion. Their eyes followed her every movement, wide and fascinated. You know how to cook? Annie asked, sounding genuinely surprised, like this was breaking some kind of law of nature. Of course I know how to cook, Emily said, stirring the mixture over her small gas stove that sometimes worked and sometimes didn't. Tonight, thank God, it was cooperating. What, you think I survive on air and wishes? No, it's just... Annie hesitated, trying to find the right words. You look like someone who fights, not someone who cooks. You have muscles, like really big muscles, like Superhero muscles. I didn't know people with muscles could cook. I thought they just ate protein shakes and raw eggs. Emily turned to look at her, one eyebrow raised in amusement. I can be both, you know. Women are multi-talented like that. We can fight and cook. We can be strong and gentle. We can kick butt and make hot chocolate. We're not one thing. We're everything. That's so cool, Jamal said admiringly, his eyes wide with something like hero worship. You can fight and cook. You're like a ninja chef. No, wait, a warrior chef. No, a food fighter. Emily snorted, almost spilling the hot chocolate. Food fighter? I actually kind of like that. Maybe I should put that on my business cards. You should, June insisted seriously. And you should wear a cape. All heroes wear capes. Capes are impractical for fighting, Emily said, equally serious. They get in the way. You could trip on them. The bad guys could grab them and pull you down. And they're expensive to clean. No capes. Oh, June thought about this very carefully, her little face scrunched up in concentration. That makes sense. You're very smart. Like really, really smart. Maybe the smartest person I've ever met. Smarter than my teacher. Smarter than... June, Annie interrupted gently. Maybe let Miss Emily finish making the hot chocolate before you list everyone she's smarter than. A few minutes later, Emily handed each child a steaming mug of hot chocolate. They took it carefully, their small hands wrapping around the warm mugs like they were holding something precious, like they were holding treasure. They blew on it to cool it down, then took small, careful sips. The change in their faces was immediate and beautiful to watch. Their tense shoulders relaxed like someone had cut the strings holding them up. Their scared expressions softened into something resembling peace. Their eyes lost that haunted look and just looked like children's eyes should look. June even smiled, the first real smile Emily had seen from her. So the kind of smile that lit up her whole face and made her look like the 3-year-old she was supposed to be. This is so good, June said, her voice filled with wonder and joy. This is like heaven in a cup, like if clouds were made of chocolate, like if happiness was a drink. It's just hot chocolate, Emily said, but she was pleased, proud even. She'd made 3 traumatized children smile. That was something. That was worth something. No, Annie insisted, taking another sip and closing her eyes like she was savoring fine wine instead of hot chocolate. It's the best hot chocolate. Better than the one our chef makes. Way better. Your chef makes hot chocolate? Emily asked, curious. Our chef makes everything, Jamal said importantly, puffing out his little chest. He went to fancy cooking school in France or Italy, one of those countries where they put cheese on everything and act like it's fancy. But your hot chocolate tastes better than his. It tastes like it was made with love. Emily didn't know what to say to that. Her throat felt tight. Her eyes felt a little misty. Made with love. She'd just thrown some cocoa and sugar and milk in a pot, but somehow to these kids it was special. Maybe because it was the first kindness they'd received in days. Maybe because they were finally safe. Maybe because sometimes the simplest things mean the most. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the children sipping their drinks slowly, making them last. Emily watched them, her mind racing. What was she supposed to do with 3 runaway rich kids? She couldn't just keep them here forever. Their father was probably losing his mind with worry, probably calling police, turning the city upside down looking for them. But then again, if what they were saying about this Angela woman was true, Emily pulled out her phone intending to Google something helpful like what to do with lost children or how not to get arrested for accidentally kidnapping rich kids. But before she could search anything, June's small voice broke through her thoughts. Miss Emily? Just Emily is fine, sweetheart. Emily, June corrected herself, her voice shy and small. Can we stay here tonight? Just tonight, please? We promise we'll be good. We'll be so good. The goodest we've ever been. Emily looked at 3 pairs of hopeful, exhausted, traumatized eyes staring at her. 3 children who'd been through more tonight than any child should ever have to go through. 3 kids who were looking at her like she was their last hope. She should say no. This was complicated. This could get her in trouble. Rich people were unpredictable. Rich, angry fathers even more so. But when she looked at June's face, at the hope and fear and exhaustion all mixed together, when she looked at Annie trying so hard to be brave for her siblings, when she looked at Jamal's attempt at looking tough even though he was clearly terrified. Yeah, Emily said softly, her voice gentle. You can stay here tonight. After the children finished their hot chocolate, Emily helped them get ready for bed. She'd given them her bed. It was small, barely big enough for 1 adult, definitely not meant for 3 children, but they squeezed onto it together like little sardines in a tin. She'd offered them some of her clothes to sleep in since they couldn't wear their fancy day clothes to bed. Of course, her clothes were way too big. June looked like she was drowning in Emily's t-shirt, the neck hole so big it kept slipping off her shoulder. Jamal's borrowed shorts went down past his knees, making him look like he was wearing a skirt. Annie had rolled up the sleeves of Emily's hoodie about 6 times and it still hung off her like a dress. But they were clean, fed, safe, warm. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, they looked peaceful. Emily had laid out some blankets on the floor for herself. She was planning to sleep there for the night, close enough to hear if they needed anything. But first, she needed to talk to someone. She needed to process what had just happened. She needed advice. She tiptoed to her bathroom, the only place where she could talk without waking the children, closed the door softly and sat on the edge of her bathtub. Then she pulled out her phone and called her best friend. Toe picked up on the second ring. Emily, girl, I was just thinking about you. How was work? Did Mrs. Adatola finally manage a proper jumping jack? Emily's voice was quiet but serious. I need to talk to you about something. Something crazy. There was a pause on the other end. Then Tope's voice came back, concerned. Okay, now you're scaring me. What happened? Are you okay? Did someone... I'm fine, I'm okay, but... Emily took a deep breath. I just rescued 3 rich kids from kidnappers, and now they're sleeping in my bed. Silence. Complete silence. Emily could practically hear Tope's brain short-circuiting. Then, I'm sorry, what? Emily, did you just say, did you hit your head? Did someone drug you? Did you... I'm serious, Emily whisper shouted, looking at the bathroom door to make sure she wasn't being too loud. I'm completely serious. I was walking home from work and I heard children screaming. So I ran to help, and there were these area boys, like 4 of them, trying to kidnap 3 kids. Rich kids, Tope. Designer clothes, expensive backpacks, the whole deal. And you, what, fought the kidnappers? Tope's voice had gone up several octaves. Of course I fought them. What was I supposed to do? Just walk past screaming children? Just pretend I didn't hear them? So I grabbed a stick and I beat them up. You beat them up? Emily, you beat up kidnappers, multiple kidnappers, by yourself. Shh, not so loud. The kids are sleeping. Emily! Tope was trying to whisper shout now too. You beat up 4 men? 4. You could have been hurt. You could have been killed. You could have... Wait, are you hurt? Did they hurt you? Do you need to go to the hospital? I'm fine, Emily said, examining her hands. Not even a scratch. Didn't get touched. They were amateurs, Tope. Probably just local area boys who thought they could make quick money. They had no training, no technique. They just thought because they had numbers they could win. Big mistake. Okay. Taupe was clearly trying to process this, her voice doing that thing where she was trying to stay calm but failing. So you beat up 4 kidnappers. Then what? Then I took the kids. I couldn't just leave them there. What if more area boys came? What if those ones came back with reinforcements? So I brought them to my apartment. You brought 3 strange children to your apartment. They're not strange, they're sweet. Traumatized and terrified, but sweet. Emily. Taupe's voice went very serious now, dropping to that tone she used when she was about to give a lecture. Do you know who these children are? Like, who they are? You said they're rich? Very rich. Their clothes probably cost more than my rent. Their backpacks are designer. These are rich, rich kids. Then their parents are probably looking for them. Right now, Emily, the police are probably involved. There's probably a citywide search, and you have them in your apartment. What if someone thinks you kidnapped them? What if someone thinks you're part of some ransom scheme? What if they ran away from home? Emily interrupted, explaining quickly. Their father's girlfriend was being cruel to them. Taupe, she told them they could starve. She said she didn't care if they died. She took their phones, locked them in their rooms, said horrible things about their dead mother. Oh my God. Taupe went quiet for a moment. Those poor babies. That's horrible. But Emily, you still need to be careful. Rich people don't think like normal people. They have lawyers. They have power. They have connections. What if the father blames you? What if he thinks you put his kids in danger? Or what if he thinks you're trying to extort him or something? I saved his kids. Emily's voice rose slightly, and she had to force herself to calm down. I saved them from actual kidnappers. How could he blame me for that? Rich people don't need logic to blame poor people, Taupe said darkly. My cousin working for a rich family, remember? They fired her because their dog got Emily, a dog that she wasn't even supposed to be taking care of. She was the nanny for the kids, not the dog walker. But when the dog got sick, they needed someone to blame, so they blamed her. Accused her of poisoning it. She had to get a lawyer. It was a whole mess. Emily rubbed her temples. A headache was forming. So what am I supposed to do? I can't just throw them out on the street. They're terrified of going to the police for some reason. And they're just kids, Taupe. Little kids who've already lost their mother and are dealing with an evil stepmother-girlfriend situation straight out of a Nollywood movie. I'm not saying throw them out, Taupe said quickly. I would never tell you to do that. You did the right thing taking them in. I'm just saying, be careful. Protect yourself. Tomorrow, try to find their grandmother like they wanted. Help them get home safely. But make sure people know you're just trying to help. Make sure there are witnesses. Make sure you have your story straight. Don't let this become a situation where you get blamed for something that's not your fault. Emily sighed, long and tired. Okay, tomorrow I'll try to find their grandmother. They said she lives in Okoye with a blue gate and flowers. Do they know the address? No. The street name? No. The house number? Taupe, they're 7, 5, and 3 years old. They barely know their own phone numbers. The oldest one thought Grandma Street was a real street name. Oh, Emily. Taupe laughed despite herself. This is going to be difficult. I know. Like really difficult. I know. Like trying to find a needle in a haystack, except the needle is a blue gate in a neighborhood full of blue gates. Taupe, I get it. Okay. Taupe's voice softened. But you're going to do it anyway. Of course I am. What kind of person would I be if I didn't? There was a pause, then Taupe's voice came back softer, warmer. A regular person, Emily. Most people would have taken those kids straight to the police and washed their hands of the whole situation. Called it a day, gone home. But you're not most people. You never have been. Emily smiled despite her worry and exhaustion. Is that a compliment? Yes, but also a warning. Your hero complex is going to get you in trouble one day. It's not a hero complex. Emily, you just fought 4 kidnappers with a stick. It was a very good stick. Emily, fine, maybe I have a small hero complex, just a tiny one. But these kids needed help. I know, and that's why I love you, but this is why I worry about you. Taupe sighed. Okay, here's what you're going to do. Tomorrow, you find that grandmother. You get those kids home safely. You make sure multiple people see you helping them. Get witnesses, take photos if you can, whatever. And then you get out. You don't stick around for the father to thank you or blame you or whatever. You just make sure those kids are safe and then you disappear back to your normal life, okay? Okay. Promise me, Emily. Promise me you'll be careful. I promise. Good. Now go get some sleep. You're going to need your energy tomorrow if you're going to be searching all of Ikoyi for a blue gate and some flowers. You really know how to make me feel better about my life choices. That's what best friends are for. Love you, girl. Love you too. Emily hung up and stared at her phone for a moment. Then she looked at herself in the bathroom mirror. Her hair was a disaster, escaping from her ponytail in about 17 different directions. Her face was tired, dark circles under her eyes. Her tank top had that tear from when one of the area boys had tried to grab her. What have you gotten yourself into, Emily? She asked her reflection. Her reflection wisely didn't answer. It just looked tired and slightly judgmental. She turned off the bathroom light and tiptoed back into the living room. The children were sleeping peacefully, pressed together like puppies. June was snoring softly. Jamal had his arm around her protectively. Annie had one hand clutching her sister's sleeve, even in sleep. Emily settled onto her makeshift bed on the floor and tried to get comfortable. The floor was hard, her back was already complaining. She was going to regret this tomorrow. But when she looked at those 3 sleeping children one more time, at their peaceful faces, at the way they felt safe enough to sleep deeply, maybe it was worth it. She closed her eyes and tried to sleep. Tomorrow was going to be a very long day. She had no idea just how long. While Emily was settling 3 children into her tiny apartment and trying to figure out what her life had become, Brian Kingswell was stepping out of his car in front of his mansion, completely unaware that his life was about to fall apart faster than a house of cards in a windstorm. The business trip to South Africa had been successful, wildly successful. He'd closed the deal, a deal worth billions of naira. He'd signed contracts that would make him even richer than he already was. He'd secured partnerships that would probably make him another billion naira before the year ended. He was tired but satisfied. His feet hurt from all the meetings. His brain hurt from all the negotiations. But his wallet was happy, his bank account was dancing, and most importantly, he was home early. He'd originally planned to stay in South Africa until next week. There were more meetings scheduled, more business dinners, more opportunities to make even more money, because apparently billionaires could never have enough money. But something had been nagging at him, a feeling he couldn't quite shake, like an itch in his brain that he couldn't scratch, like a voice in the back of his head saying, "Go home, something's wrong." Maybe it was parent instinct. Maybe it was just coincidence. Maybe it was divine intervention. Maybe it was his dead wife looking out for their children from heaven. But whatever it was, it had made him book an earlier flight home, cancel his remaining meetings, head straight to the airport because he missed his kids. He wanted to see them. He'd brought them gifts, expensive toys from a fancy store in Johannesburg that specialized in overpriced items for spoiled children, a robot that could talk and dance for Annie, a remote control car that could do flips for Jamal, a giant teddy bear bigger than she was for June. He couldn't wait to see their faces light up, couldn't wait to hear them scream, "Daddy," and run to him like he was the best thing that had ever happened to them. He climbed the steps to his front door, his Louis Vuitton briefcase in one hand, because even casual Brian had expensive briefcases, shopping bags full of toys in the other. He was smiling, actually smiling. A real smile, not the fake business smile he wore in meetings. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been this excited to come home. He pushed open the front door. It wasn't locked, which should have been his first clue that something was wrong, but he was too excited to notice, and stepped into his mansion. The house was quiet, too quiet. Usually when he came home, there was noise. Annie would be massacring some classical piece on the piano. Jamal would be zooming his toy cars around, making vroom vroom sounds loud enough to wake the dead. June would be singing some songs she'd learned in school, probably off-key, but with enough enthusiasm to make up for it. But now, silence. Just the sound of a TV in the living room. Some show with people shouting at each other. "Hello," Brian called out, setting down his bags in the foyer. "I'm home. Daddy's home." No response. No patter of little feet running to greet him. No excited screams of, "Daddy!" Just silence. He walked further into the house, frowning, and found Angela in the living room, sprawled on his expensive Italian leather couch like she owned it. She was watching her telenovela, so absorbed she didn't even notice him at first. There was a wine glass in her hand, his expensive wine, he noticed, the one that cost more per bottle than most people's monthly salary. Brian's frown deepened. Something felt off, wrong. "Angela?" She jumped like someone had set off a firecracker under her, nearly spilling her glass of wine all over his expensive couch. "Brian, you're back. You weren't supposed to be back until next week. What? Why? When did you get back?" "I finished early," he said, his frown becoming a full-on scowl. Why did she look so nervous? Why was she stammering? "Caught an earlier flight. Wanted to surprise the kids. Where are they?" "The kids?" Angela set down her wine glass with a hand that shook slightly. Her expression flickered with something Brian couldn't quite read. Nervousness? Guilt? Fear? They're upstairs in their rooms." "Really?" Brian headed toward the stairs, confusion growing by the second. "They're being awfully quiet. Usually they'd be down here by now, asking what I brought them, making noise, being kids." "Well, you know," Angela said quickly, too quickly, getting to her feet a bit too fast, her voice a bit too high. "They were tired. Long day at school, tests and homework and all that exhausting child stuff. They've probably fallen asleep. You know how kids are. They sleep like logs." Something about her tone made Brian pause at the bottom of the stairs. She was talking too fast. Too many explanations for a simple question. Too much detail. When people gave too much detail, they were usually lying. He'd learned that in business. The best liars kept it simple. The bad liars over-explained. But he shrugged it off. He was probably just tired from the flight. Paranoid. Jet-lagged. Reading too much into things. He climbed the stairs, his footsteps echoing through the silent house. Each step felt heavier than the last. When he reached the second floor, he walked to Annie's room first, the pink one with the princess theme that she'd begged for when she was 5. He pushed open the door. Empty. The bed was made so perfectly it looked like no one had slept in it in days. Her toys were arranged neatly on the shelves. Too neatly. Annie never arranged her toys neatly. She left them scattered across the floor like casualties in a war zone, which drove the housekeepers crazy. But Annie wasn't there. Maybe she's in Jamal's room, Brian thought, his heart starting to beat a little faster. He walked down the hall and opened Jamal's door, the blue one with spaceships and planets painted on the walls, glow-in-the-dark stars stuck to the ceiling. Empty. His heart was really pounding now. His hands were starting to shake. He practically ran to June's room, the yellow one with the butterfly decals she'd picked out herself, the ones that had taken the decorator 3 days to put up perfectly. Empty. "Angela!" Brian's voice echoed through the house, sharp and panicked, loud enough to probably be heard 3 houses down, loud enough to make the chandelier shake. "Angela!" She appeared at the bottom of the stairs, her face pale as a ghost, her eyes wide as dinner plates. What? What's wrong? Where are my children? Brian demanded, thundering down the stairs so fast he almost tripped over his own feet. You said they were in their rooms. They're not in their rooms. Where are they? They were there earlier. Angela's eyes darted around like a trapped animal looking for an escape route. I swear, they must have. Maybe they went to the playroom? Or the kitchen? Or the playroom? Brian didn't wait for her to finish. He ran to the playroom, the room filled with more toys than most toy stores, toys that had cost more than cars. Empty. He ran to the kitchen, his heart in his throat. Empty. He ran to the study, the library, the game room, the home theater, even checked the bathrooms. Empty. Empty. His children were gone. Brian felt like he couldn't breathe, like someone had reached into his chest and squeezed his lungs, like the floor was tilting under him. His vision was tunneling. His hands were shaking so hard he had to grip the stair railing to keep from falling. Where were they? Where were his babies? What did you do? He roared, turning on Angela with a fury he didn't know he possessed, a rage that made his voice shake the walls. I left my children with you. I trusted you with the most precious things in my life. Where are they? I don't know. Angela's voice went high and panicky, tears starting to form in her eyes. Crocodile tears, probably. I told them to go to their rooms after we had a small disagreement, and I thought they were there. I didn't know they would. After what? Brian's voice dropped to something dangerous, something cold, something that made Angela take a step back. What disagreement? What happened? Angela's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Nothing happened. They were just being difficult and Difficult? They're children. Children, Angela. 7, 5, and 3 years old. What do you mean difficult? I might have raised my voice a little. A little? Brian wanted to grab her and shake her, but he restrained himself. They were being disrespectful. Angela's fear was turning into defensiveness now, her tears drying up as anger took over. They were talking back to me, questioning my authority, making me look like a fool in my own. This is not your house. Brian's voice cracked like thunder, like a whip, like the sound of a world ending. They're children. What could they have possibly done that made you think it was okay to? He stopped, took a breath, forced himself to calm down even though every cell in his body was screaming. He needed to focus. He could be angry later. He could deal with Angela later. Right now, he needed to find his kids. Brian pulled out his phone with shaking hands and started calling everyone. The housekeeper, the cook, the gardener, the driver. Everyone who worked in the house or anywhere near the house. Have you seen the children? Any of them? When was the last time you saw them? The answers were all variations of the same. No, sir, not since this afternoon, sir. I thought they were in their rooms with Miss Angela, sir. With every no, Brian's panic grew like a living thing inside him. With every I thought they were in their rooms, his heart beat faster and faster until he thought it might explode. Brian hung up and immediately dialed the head of his security team, his fingers fumbling with the phone. I need you to check all the security footage from this afternoon until now. My children are missing. Do you understand? Missing. Missing, sir. The man on the other end sounded confused, like this was some kind of joke. Missing! Brian was pacing now, running his hands through his hair so hard he was probably pulling some out. Check every camera. I need to know when they left, where they went, everything. Check the gates, the compound, the street, everything. Yes, sir. Right away, sir. While his security team scrambled to pull up footage, Brian ran outside to the gatehouse, his feet slipping on the perfectly polished marble floors. He found Uncle Joseph, the gateman, sprawled in his chair like he didn't have a care in the world, snoring loud enough to wake up ancestors in the next village. Snoring like this was his full-time job, and keeping the gate was just a hobby. Snoring like he was in a competition for world's loudest snorer, and he was winning. Brian grabbed the man's shoulder and shook him so hard Joseph's head snapped back. "Joseph! Joseph, wake up!" The gateman jolted awake, his eyes wide and confused, drool running down his chin. "Sir, Mr. Kingswell? You're back? When did you see my children leave?" Brian demanded, his voice hoarse from shouting. "When? Your children?" Joseph blinked, still half asleep, his brain clearly not working at full capacity. "Leave? I didn't see them leave, sir. Nobody passed through this gate. I've been here the whole time. I would have seen them. You've been sleeping the whole time." Brian wanted to grab the man and shake him harder. Wanted to fire him on the spot. Wanted to do something, anything. "How long were you asleep?" Joseph's face went pale as he realized what he'd done, as the severity of the situation hit him like a truck. Sir, I'm sorry. I just closed my eyes for a small moment. I swear, just a tiny moment." "How long?" Maybe 2, maybe 3 hours. Brian didn't hear the rest, didn't want to hear the rest. He was already running back to the house, his phone pressed to his ear, his heart pounding like a war drum. "Sir?" His head of security came on the line, his voice tense. "We've checked the footage." "And?" Brian's voice was barely recognizable, hoarse and desperate and terrified. "The children left through the front gate at approximately 6:15 p.m. Sir, they snuck past the gateman while he was sleeping. They had backpacks. They looked like they were running away, sir." Brian felt his knees go weak. Felt like someone had punched him in the stomach and twisted the knife. Felt like the world was ending. 6:15. It was almost 9 p.m. now. His children had been gone for nearly 3 hours. 3 hours. In Lagos, at night. 3 small children. Alone. "Pull up every camera on the street," Brian ordered, his voice shaking so badly he could barely get the words out. Traffic cameras, security cameras from neighboring houses, shops, everywhere. "I need to know which direction they went. I need to find them. I need to find my children." "Yes, sir. But, sir, I have to tell you, after they turned the corner onto the main road, we lost them. There aren't many cameras in that area. We're checking with neighboring houses now, but..." Brian closed his eyes. Of course his children had disappeared into the one blind spot in the entire neighborhood. He ended the call and immediately dialed another number. "The police. This is Brian Kingswell," he said the moment someone picked up, his voice breaking, his hand shaking. "I need to report missing children. 3 of them, ages 7, 5, and 3. They've been missing for 3 hours. This is an emergency." As he gave the details to the police, descriptions, what they were wearing, where they might have gone, anything and everything he could think of, Brian felt a cold terror settling into his bones like ice water in his veins. His children were out there, somewhere in Lagos, at night. 3 small children who'd never been outside with supervision. 3 babies who didn't know how dangerous the world could be. And he had no idea where they were. No idea if they were safe. No idea if they were hurt. No idea if he'd ever see them again. The police promised to send units immediately. Promised to put out alerts. Promised to check hospitals, police stations, everywhere. Promised to do everything they could. But their promises felt empty, hollow, like words that meant nothing, because his children were out there and he wasn't with them. Brian ended the call and stood in the middle of his massive living room, the room with its expensive furniture and expensive art and expensive everything that suddenly meant nothing. What good was being rich if he couldn't protect his children? What good was all his money if he couldn't keep them safe? What good was his empire if the 3 people who mattered most were gone? "Brian," Angela's voice came from behind him, small and scared. "I'm so sorry. I didn't mean for this to happen. I didn't think they would actually..." "Get out," Brian said quietly, not even turning to look at her. "What?" "Get out," he whirled on her, his eyes blazing with a fury that made her stumble backward. Get your things and get out of my house, now! But Brian, please, I didn't mean... You told them they could starve. Brian's voice rose to a roar that shook the chandelier. You took their phones. You locked them in their rooms. My children ran away because of you. Because you made them so miserable, so scared, so desperate that they thought running away into the streets of Lagos at night was safer than staying with you. Angela was crying now, mascara running down her face in black rivers. Please, I was just trying to discipline them. They need discipline. They're so spoiled, they need someone to teach them. Discipline? Brian laughed, and it was a harsh, bitter. You call that discipline? I call it abuse. I call it cruelty. Those are my children, my babies. They lost their mother. All they have is me, and I left them with you. I trusted you, and you... He couldn't even finish. He was so angry he couldn't form words. We're done, he said finally, his voice cold and final. This relationship is over. I don't want to see you again. Ever. Pack your things. Security will escort you out. And if you ever come near my children again, if I even hear that you've tried to contact them, I will make sure you regret it. Do you understand me? Angela fled upstairs, sobbing loudly, making a scene. Brian didn't care. He pulled out his phone and started making more calls. His business partners, his friends, everyone he knew with connections, with power, with reach. I need your help. My children are missing. 3 kids. I'll send you their photos. If you see them, hear anything, call me immediately. I'll pay whatever it takes. Just find them. He called the heads of private security firms. I want every available person on this. Search the streets. Check hospitals. Check police stations. Check everywhere. Find my children. He called the commissioner of police directly. I don't care what you're doing. I don't care if you're in a meeting with the president. My children are missing, and I need every officer in Lagos looking for them. Now, he called his mother. Mom, his voice broke. The kids, they're missing. They ran away. I need you here. I don't know what to do. His mother's voice, usually so calm and composed, went sharp with panic. What? Ran away? Why would they run away? Brian, what happened? Angela, she was cruel to them. Mom, I trusted her and I should have listened to the kids. They tried to tell me she was mean and I didn't listen, and now they're gone and I'm coming, his mother said firmly, her voice steady even though Brian could hear the fear underneath. I'm coming right now. Don't worry, baby. We'll find them. We'll find your children. They're smart kids. They're survivors. We'll find them. But even his mother's assurance felt empty, because the truth was Lagos was a huge city, a city of over 20 million people, a city where 3 small children could disappear like drops of water in an ocean, a city where terrible things happened every day. Brian sank down onto his couch, the expensive Italian leather couch that suddenly felt uncomfortable and cold and meaningless, and put his head in his hands. And for the first time since he was a child, Brian Kingswell cried. He cried for his children out there somewhere, shared and alone. He cried for his failures as a father. He cried for his dead wife, who would be so disappointed in him right now. He cried because he didn't know what else to do. His children were out there, and he had no idea how to find them.